Sarah. I am just absolutely excited for our conversation. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Sue. I'm so excited to be here too. I appreciate it.
So, I like to let my guests introduce themselves. After that, we'll just jump in and go from there.
That's perfect. So, hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Guidus. I am the founder and CEO of Second in Command Academy. I was very excited to launch this because it started as a passion project that now is just my full-time career and my baby. But the last 8+ years of my career, I really was serving as that number two, that integrator at several different $1 million+ startups, really helping them grow and scale. And I wore so many different hats, from marketing director, even though I was also doing HR and fulfillment and ops, to director of ops, to COO, and then eventually to CEO of that agency after it got acquired. And I just realized how important that number two role is. And then when I was in the CEO spot, leading a team of 50+ people, learning how vital it was for me to have a right hand that was really being who's really being cultivated, trained. And that's really what Second in Command Academy offers. And so I've been really excited to be able to navigate scaling different agencies, being able to play in SOP development, in hiring and recruiting, in system, creation and optimization, and finances, and everything in between that, you want an integrator to really be hands-on on. And so it's been an amazing journey.
You threw out a lot of terms there, terms I know, terms you know, and we're very familiar with. We've got SOPs, we've got integrators, we've got CEOs, we've got second in commands, we've got two ICs, you got all that in there. Let's go back to the basics and maybe just go back to the beginning of your story as well with second in command. And really, what is, we all kind of know what the CEO is.
Mhm.
That's the one who runs the show, but the COO, or the chief operating officer, is that second person in command that often goes unnoticed. So, talk about
Yeah.
that role first.
Yeah. Well, first, I'll backtrack a little more, even because the second in command, what's so interesting is I found, especially in small businesses, they don't necessarily just have to have a COO title. I work with a lot of number twos who have like an AM position, or like account manager position, or executive assistant position, or director of ops. But essentially, that role is the person who is serving the right hand of their visionary, the CEO. They are the one who's in the nitty gritty, building a lot of these processes, from like client onboarding to client fulfillment with whatever your product or service is. You're managing the team, you're doing lots of one-on-ones, you're boots on the ground, making sure that whatever idea your CEO comes up with actually happens and gets implemented. And usually that does mean you're wearing a ton of different hats. And if you are in a startup or a smaller company, you are filling in with wherever you need to fill in. Sometimes that's even sales. Sometimes it's doing all the HR interviews. And like you said, Sue, this is a person who sometimes goes unnoticed because they're so in the nitty gritty. They aren't the one necessarily coming up with the ideas, which is what the CEO does. And they really are the one who steers the ship to make sure everything that's happening, that needs to happen, gets done. So again, this is a person who is in your org chart. If you're looking at your org chart and the CEO is here, they're right below the CEO, and then the rest of the team is usually below them.
Okay. How would somebody know then? They're listening and they're going, what if how do I know I'm a COO? Or how do I know I have those qualities that embody a COO? Because you mentioned that your CEO, the one in charge, is generally the visionary, and visionaries self-explanatory. They're the ones that come up with all the really cool ideas, and they're out there and they're like, hey, let's figure out how to implement, this strategy, but don't let me go into the day to day. Don't just go figure out how to do it. This is my idea, right?
So I would say that you're that second in command. Like, first, the terms that I use for this: second in command,
Mhm.
integrator, it can be COO. Like, you're that person if you are the main barrier between the CEO and the rest of the team. You're the main communicator. So, as in, the team funnels to you before anything gets funneled to the CEO. That's kind of one. Number two is, when anything does have to get done, big projects, you're the one who's managing all of them to make sure it gets done. That doesn't mean you have to do everything. Hopefully you have some team to be able to support you, maybe with writing copy or design or whatever it is, building. But you're the one to make sure, again, that, if your CEO is wanting to launch a new service, you're making sure that everything that needs to happen prior to launch happens. You might be the one who's building automations, for instance. So you might be plugging and playing tools and connecting things through Zapier and creating great processes so that if a client onboards, all the automation that has to happen after is really clean and really great. You're the one who, in terms of like team leadership, again, being the kind of the barrier between the team and the CEO, you're the one who's making sure you're holding people accountable, not only for task management, but you're actually doing the leadership, cultivating those people too, to make sure, like those copywriters, those designers, anyone below you is growing with the company as well. You might also be the one to talk about the high level stuff with the CEO that other people on the team don't. And that could be stuff like finances and numbers, like profit margins, COGS,
Mm.
seeing the full tech stack, seeing the money that's going out. A lot of the times that's very important if you're in this position because you're sometimes making decisions that should be based on finances. So yeah, just a few ways
It's,
you'll kind of
yeah,
guess if that's
that's a
your.
lot of practical application I hear
Mhm.
there. A ton of practical application. What would be the difference between, say, like a project manager and a COO?
I think the size of your team. Because to be
Okay.
honest, I
Yeah,
work
that
with some companies that have like 5 to 7 employees,
uh
and the integrator is the one who's also doing that, a lot of the project management and overseeing tasks getting done, deadlines getting hit, implementation, making sure it's happening. However, if you're a team of 20 plus, you may be able to be a COO who has people below you to act as just leads for other implementers that you
mm.
have.
As I
Mhm.
listen to what a COO does, my thought goes to how does somebody keep all that going? I mean, obviously there's a team underneath them, but there has to be some mental fortitude that goes along with that, or some character qualities that a COO
Mm.
would embody in
Mhm.
order to help them be able to juggle all of that stuff. What do you see as a common thread for COOs that would be characteristics that would help them balance and juggle all of this stuff,
Mhm.
all these responsibilities that they have?
It's so true because that position, you're often the one like managing fires and things too. So there's a lot of the mental and qualities that I like to consider as like secret superpowers for these individuals. And it's usually like they possess these skills that I'll dive into that they may not realize like how valuable they are until they're actually implementing it and the CEO is like, "Oh my God, you're saving my life. You're taking I'm gaining so much time back by having you here." But a lot of it is the ability to stay like to remain really steady. So that might be not, being super reactive during certain situations with team or culture, HR stuff that comes up. Being able to be like almost like the sham wow for the company, like absorbing a lot of the stress and just being able to process it and not feel too reactive and being calm and steady. You are the steady ground for the CEO and your team. A lot of like natural organization comes to these individuals. Organization is definitely a skill that you can work on, but being able to have that naturally, and usually our brains tick better when things are organized, they're the ones who are going to create systems for you and be able to see how things should be working, whether it's Google Drive organization or organization with your SOPs, whatever that is, or
Mhm.
internal team structure organization. They're going to create the systems that are going to help the CEO and everyone else be able to sleep at night. And that's going to come pretty naturally to them. Another pretty natural skill for this role that I think is important is the ability to see ripple effects. I love talking about
Mm.
this. This is like my favorite thing.
I think that's really cool, ripple effects, because it does tie into small steps, big wins if you think about it. Because
Yeah.
when you throw something, I love I just even love the visual of a ripple effect. That visual when you take that rock and you throw it into a pond and then you see those ripples go out. That one rock is one small thing.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I can't wait to
Yes,
hear what you're going to
absolutely.
say.
Absolutely, Sue. That's perfect. So, yeah, I think no matter what the day to day looks like, because it can look different from business to business when you're wearing that COO or second in command hat, no matter what it is, you are facing a massive amount of communication and ideas coming in from your CEO and your team from anything, or you're having to make decisions, and you're the one who will naturally say, okay, if we do this, what is everything else that's going to happen? how can we be proactive? How is this going to help us? What issues are we going to run into? So examples could be like your CEO wants to increase pricing for your service. And you have to think of the ripple effects. Okay, but what about our legacy clients? Are they going to stay the same? What is that going to look like? Or if you wanted to decrease pricing, same thing. We're not like, okay, if we have legacy clients that are at this higher rate and they see our pricing page, now that it's lower, what's that going to look like? How's this going to help us with our sales conversion? You start to see all the different effects that are going to come in and trickle just from this one little action or decision that's going to happen. And it's really like tied into also being able to see the bigger picture, but it's really so much more nitty gritty than just the bigger picture. It's like, what's the domino effect that's going to happen if we do this? And it's our responsibility and something we need to really hone in on and practice all the time as that second in command. But I think that's a really good trait for them to be able to have, in addition to being able to remain grounded, being organized and professional. You also have to be a great communicator. You need to be able to feel confident handling conflict and have the mindset that if I'm not handling conflict, I'm actually depriving, people of growth and all these things. But love the ripple effect one.
Yeah, I do too. Do you find that second in commands integrators that they have a certain disc profile that they fall under, so just, when we
Mhm.
talk about disc profile, the D is
In it. Mhm.
dominant, and I is the, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it at the moment, but the S, I was thinking about
I
S
is like the
being,
social one.
and S is your steady. So if you're a high
Mhm.
S, you're more of a steady person, and then C would be
Like the
the
analytical.
analytical. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Do you find that there's certain disc profiles that go with COOs?
Yes, that's a great question. So in my academy, like when people onboard, I actually ask them to take different assessments. One is like the
Hmm.
16 personalities or
Hmm.
Myers-Briggs, or DISC is one too. And I've noticed the majority are high S and high C. I'm a high
Hmm.
S and high C too, and I've taken it multiple times. Every single time I take it, it's always high S and C. And then the CEOs that I've known who have shared their results with me are usually high D and I, which it checks out because then you have this perfect balance between this working pair of visionary and integrator. And that's why it works so well. And everyone can just own their lane and what they're really naturally great at.
Hmm. The next question I was going to ask had to do with yin and yang, like that synergy between a COO and a CEO. You want to talk about that? Like what's,
Yeah.
about how they work together?
Yeah, I have to give a lot of credit to what I've learned from like EOS, which is a program entrepreneurial operating system, and read this great book Traction that's like my favorite book by Gino Wickman, and he talks a lot about that relationship. So a lot of what I've learned has been from resources like that and also my own experience working with some incredible CEOs and being their right hand. I think the biggest thing that number two sometimes forget, because it's easy to get lost in the overwhelm and fire mode when we're doing our day to day, is that CEOs have hired us and placed us in our role because we see things that they no longer see in the company. We're in the trenches, they're no longer in the trenches. And so it's our responsibility and our duty to bring things, whether it is ideas, thoughts, shifts that need to change, to their attention, even if the CEO may not necessarily agree right away. But it's because we're in the nitty gritty. So, one of the things I like to teach on a lot is not only how great the relationship between visionary and integrator is, but also why it's important for them to be different, for them to have the yin and yang, and for them to create that balance and how to handle communication, not conflict, but just sometimes if you need to shoot down your CEO's idea because, or like adjust it or refine it because
Mhm.
they don't see things that you do anymore, or they're not understanding the ripple effects or status of certain projects or how this might affect certain departments or capacity or whatever it is. It's our responsibility to make sure we're communicating that and also educating them while they're educating us on ways we can innovate too. So holding ourselves accountable to show up for the CEO in that way is really important. And that's where a lot of nailing that communication comes down to.
Have you ever come across a situation where you've got a CEO in place and then you've got a COO and they realize they do not have that yin yang type of relationship? What would you
Mhm.
do if you have that type of situation? And
Mhm.
I know it's hard to generalize that,
Mhm.
but you've probably seen some commonalities on how to deal with something like that.
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, if something is not a great relationship fit, it's not going to be what's best for the business. And a lot of times, something that we learn is this concept GWC, get it, want it, capacity to do it. That's also from Traction. It's just as important for a CEO to ask themselves that about their right hand as it is for the right hand to ask themselves about that for where they're at too. So that means like one, get it. Do I get the role? Also, does my CEO get like what's supposed to be happening to be able to scale? Do I feel supported? Do they want it? Are they super passionate about it? Do you have a leader? Do you have a CEO who's really wanting to grind and who is fully in it? Do you have a right hand who's really in it, wanting to grind and work? And then does everybody have capacity to show up in the ways that they need to? I feel like if, we're not able to say a super eager, hopefully I'm able to say this, hell yes to all of that for both of them.
Good.
It may not be the best fit. And then it's just, we need to, that second in command will be able to better serve with the leader that they're super excited about. And that CEO
Yeah.
will be able to find another second in command who feels like more in alignment to be able to serve them too. So that's the GWC concept that you can kind of lean on. And if something is not a mesh, then you want to make sure everyone is in the right seat doing the right things. And that goes both ways.
Yeah. Isn't there a saying that goes hire fast, fire fast, something like that, or hire
Mm,
slow, fire fast? I forget
mm,
what it is, but if somebody's
yeah,
not the right fit, it's not the right fit.
yeah,
Yeah. I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast are entrepreneurs, and a lot of times they're just a solopreneur. But, if you create a company, you have a concept, you create it. And what are your thoughts on somebody and they're running that in that position themselves? Do you believe that they've kind of backed themselves into the second in command position, being the solopreneur to begin with? And as you talk about that, what are some markers that an entrepreneur should look for when they realize, oh, I backed myself into the COO position, but I don't want to be there anymore. It's time to bring, other people on to do that.
I love that question. I understand that when you have a dream and you're starting a venture and you're building your company, unless you're able to, get funding or you can find that unicorn person to be your partner who serves as the integrator and maybe they'll work for free and you guys are going to do profit sharing or whatever it is, it's not uncommon to start as a solopreneur and to be able to start building this on your own, meaning you are wearing the visionary hat, the integrator hat, the sales hat, you're doing all the service delivery, like the fulfillment. And that's just kind of the name of the game. So that's not abnormal. And you just have to go into it knowing that you're the only one who can wake yourself up every day and stay motivated to own all those roles and show up in all those roles. To me, it would be a matter of prioritizing what do I need to do to get to a certain metric or number as quickly as I can that feels sustainable to be able to do the fulfillment and not be totally burnt out before I can actually start to look to bring someone in. And while I would love to say, yeah, the first hire you should bring is that integrator, is that number two. Sometimes it's actually a salesperson to be able to take that off of your plate. I think it's as you're navigating, figuring out the biggest pain point that you don't excel at, because it's not that every CEO is not going to be good at ops. Maybe that CEO really hates sales calls, or maybe they do really hate the ops side or the admin side, and they want that off their plate. From there, it's, okay, if I'm making my first hire, is it going to be someone who's local or domestic, like working domestic hours? Can it be a VA that you outsource and it's offshore hiring to do admin stuff? I think once you start to see that you've become the bottleneck in your company with scalability, you need to hire your team. And it can be one person, it can be two people, depending on what your finances
Uh,
look like. But getting really clear as to what you think those numbers are as like before you need to hire is a really good starting point so that you have a goal to be able to work toward. And just note and be, honest and transparent with yourself of where your skills are and where your skills are not, because that's probably where you're going to want to hire when you're looking for like a second in command, if that is the first person to join. they will need to be someone who can take all that off your plate. So maybe they will have to have a little bit of sales experience or customer service experience. Maybe they
Mm.
will have to have the automation building experience. It's usually when you're a solopreneur and make that first hire, depending on how much you're going to put on their plate, you kind of do need to find a little bit of a unicorn because you're obviously not a team of 15, 20 people and someone can come on and they have a very niche hat that they're wearing. That's not where we're at. So
Yeah.
just taking inventory of your goals, your numbers, what you would want to delegate, and prioritizing what's going to help move the needle with that hire. Because maybe if you do want to own sales and hire someone for admin that can grow into a larger second in command position, that will be up to your expertise and your background.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying is there's really no common formula. It's kind of like you just start and then you find out as you go, I need this person here, I need this person there. And you
Mhm.
kind of over time have that somebody fall into the COO role almost. And I was thinking about like, is there a college course on COO? Because you listed a lot of skills out there. How does somebody go about saying, okay, wow, I think I sound like I'm a COO. What do I do next?
That's a great question. Yeah, I feel like too the COO title is one that you have to realize I'm working up to that. Usually businesses are only going to hire for a COO title if someone has been an ops manager role prior or a director of ops role prior. So the goal is, okay, do I love operations? Do I love implementing things, getting things done? If I'm wanting to lean into a career into that, where can I get a resource to just start to learn and get my feet wet and know that I'm going to get a role, but it may not be the COO title first. That's kind of step one. Step two, shameless plug because this is what I do. I have an
Well, that's
academy.
why I'm asking.
Okay. I was like, I hope it's
That's
okay.
no, no, no. Yeah, it's perfectly fine because I'm so thoroughly impressed with what you have built and those
Thank
resources that are
you.
out there for a COO, realizing that this is not a light role to walk into. And the only reason, we were introduced a while ago, and at that time, I had walked into somebody's business as an impromptu COO, not a real COO, just a COO in training, and found out really fast that I had no idea what I was doing, that I was somewhat underqualified, and that there was a whole hell of a lot that I needed to learn, and I didn't know it. And
Yeah.
so in that case, I walked into a role that I was completely unprepared for. And so I
Mhm.
think it's really important to underscore that, you know, you have to know, like, you have to have some basis there. You have to be able to have some idea about what you're walking into. So, yeah. And I found your resource. It was amazing, to be honest with you. It was like a full on, okay, if I want to be a COO, this is where I can go. So, talk about what you've built there. You said it started as a passion project, and just lean into a little bit of that evolution, because I think as entrepreneurs, whenever we're starting at ground zero, we forget that, wait a minute, it takes a little bit of time to build these things. So put it into a
Mhm.
time frame perspective too.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, again, for part of your question, kind of how it started in its evolution, it was that I had transitioned from a director of ops to a COO role. And I was like, okay, I'm in this new, more elevated seat. I really wanted to continue education around it and just I found one resource at the time, and our company didn't qualify for me to join their mastermind or their group because we were making less than 5 million a year and we had only been in business at that point like 3 years. So we hadn't qualified because we didn't hit a certain tenure, all that. And I just noticed that massive gap. So again, that's kind of how it came to be. And in my vision, I was like, I just want one place I can log into, connect with other people learning these things just like me, like really unique challenges that COOs, integrators face, director of ops, and have trainings that can just teach me and that I can learn at my own time. And that's what I built. So it's called Second in Command Academy. And the whole point is that it's inclusive and accessible to people. It's $39 per month. Secondincommandacademy.com is where you can get like 2 free weeks to be able to actually explore the platform to see if it's right for you first. And there's trainings on everything that I've learned that can encompass that COO role, from recruiting, from how to run your team meetings, from implementing L10s and EOS to churn and retention tracking and systems around those, numbers you need to know, company culture, and so much more. And so what's nice is I wanted it to be something to where a person can log in, and if they know that their area that they're really trying to learn is, recruiting a VA like we were just kind of talking about, and managing someone who's in another country. How do they recruit that person? What type of pay should they do for that person? What are the tools to pay them? How do I onboard them? How's
It's
the
a lot of
review going to
stuff.
go? All of that is in there. They can kind of just focus and explore the academy in areas that they know that they really want to be able to improve.
How long did it take you to build that? And how long has your academy been around?
So I got my LLC technically in 2022, but at that time I was still full-time COO, and then our company got acquired and I became the CEO. So I actually didn't really start dedicating fully to it until October of 2023. I left that position in that agency and went full-time into Second in Command Academy. So between that time, I was just maintaining education, really creating videos and trainings based on things that I was excited about, like all the categories we just kind of mentioned.
Mhm.
Right now, it's a bank. There's, I think, about 65 trainings that live in there right now. So when people join, they immediately get access to that. And then I do 2 new trainings per month. But the timeline, there's about 20, I think, members in there right now. So it's still small and I'm really wanting to continue to grow it. But the majority of them did come from October on. I think I had a couple of stragglers a little bit in there beforehand. So we're on the scale and ramp up mode.
What's one thing that you thought would be hard about building the second in command academy and turned out that it wasn't? And then flip the question, what did you think would be easy and wound up being more challenging for you?
That's a good question. So, to be honest, I was really overwhelmed with the beginning part of like actually creating the business, of developing. I was like, how do I get an LLC? How do I do this EIN thing? How do I get the website? Like the domain, where am I going to host this? Like all of that felt really daunting, actually figuring out how to create it. And I did it in one weekend. And I just realized I had to have the time and space to be able to put my head down, create what I needed to. I went through Zen Business to be able to do my LLC and EIN formation, and it's hosted through the community through Mighty Networks, which is a great tool. But figuring all that out, felt like it was going to be really overwhelming, and it wasn't. And I think it's just because it was unfamiliar, it was unknown. And then what I thought was going to be harder was maybe just the maintenance of it, making sure that I was always creating content that I was really really proud of, and trainings that felt very exclusive and that like you couldn't just find on my LinkedIn based on what I'm teaching there, for instance, and making sure that I didn't feel like I was constantly on, a hamster wheel having to just create all these new lessons. And so I developed this good process to where once a quarter I just block out one business day, which to me is like maybe 5, 6 hours. And I'll film all the trainings that I want to throughout the quarter. I'm like adding topics based on stuff that I want to teach on. And then I edit it, I write copy around it, or I'll do course stuff around it. And I schedule it out in Mighty Networks for the next quarter. So I'm always
Cool.
like 2 to 3 months usually ahead, which feels really great. And so, and plus I love it. It's, trainings that I'm really excited and passionate on and about.
Yeah. You make a point there when you love something that you're just gonna
Mhm.
like fall right into it and it's not
Yeah.
really work. I
Yeah.
love that. So you have this platform that you built. You also built other companies as well. Talk about small steps that you took in life. Like, let's go back 10 years before you even started this journey. Did you think where you were back then, would you wind up here and where you are today? Yeah, you're shaking your
Yeah.
head no. What were some key pivots or key um, experiences that happened in your life that kind of got you to where you are today?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I could talk about this for just one whole episode with you, Sue. Um, 10 years ago, I'm 32 right now. Okay, so I was 22, kind of fresh out of college, just getting my feet into like what is my career going to be, having nothing figured out. The biggest thing I learned, I guess, in that decade and small steps I took was one, really figuring out like what my limiting beliefs were and then flipping the script. I remember in my mid 20s telling my family, my mom and dad, I never want to own a company. I never want to be a CEO. Like at the time I was a marketing director and I was like, it just seems like it's so hard. I would have no idea how to deal with taxes and all this stuff or whatever. That just seemed so overwhelming. I was like, it's so nice to be an employee and always have that security and stability. And now I'm here and that was just like a limiting belief. So it was a lot of those micro moments that I faced, but then also I learned the power of creating opportunities for myself, even if they didn't present themselves or exist. So each of the startups that I worked at, I did not get a job there as the right hand by applying on Indeed or, my first job out of college was at a marketing agency and I was doing SEO copywriting and I learned a lot, but I was like, I know I can have a better impact. So I Googled other marketing agencies near me, found one, really loved what they were doing, and I sent the CEO an email like saying, if you were to bring me on, here's everything that I would do, how I would help your company. I went to their website saying what I would shift for strategy and all this stuff. And he ended up hiring me without even knowing that he wanted to hire someone. After that, I was there for like, I think 5 years. I thought at the time I was like experiencing this dream company I really wanted to work for. I kind of did the same thing. They weren't hiring, but I sent the CEO a custom video of how passionate I am about, her company, her brand, and it got hired there as well. And then after that, I had a mentor, a woman who I was meeting with, and just kind of talked about how I really wanted to get into ops because I was still had a marketing title, but I knew I was that second in command. And we just were going for dinner and she pitched me this great business idea. And that was a company then that I ended up being with for 6 years, which was great. And that's when
Wow.
it got sold. So I think it's limiting beliefs that constantly come up and then creating micro moments that then just led me to these awesome, awesome opportunities that I just kind of fought for and created for myself.
Well, one thing out of your story that I heard was you took action.
I
And
took action.
so, yeah, you took action because, it takes a lot of balls to like send a letter to a company that isn't, they don't have a position that's open. You send it to them and say, hey, these are all the things that I see here. That, you had to, that takes a little bit of, initiative on a lot of initiative on your part. And then you put yourself out there too. So there had to be a little bit of scary moment, mixed in there too. And how did that make you feel like when they came back and like, oh yeah, we're going to hire you? I mean, did
I was,
that,
yeah. I was really proud of myself, but I was kind of
oh,
like, "Oh, crap, now I actually have to deliver." And I
yeah.
just here's hoping that I'm the right person truly for this job, and it turns out each time, it was great opportunities that were in, really alignment with what I was wanting and what they were needing to. But there is that kind of fear of really making sure you're showing up, making sure
Yeah.
hopefully you have all the right resources and team or mentors around you to make sure that you're really delivering and being the best version of yourself in that role.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was fear, but I will say what really motivated me to take actions like that was just like true grit and knowing and feeling this pull that like I wanted to learn. I wanted to be part of something that was fast paced. I wanted to be hands on helping teams grow and scale. I wanted to have the feeling of building things from the ground up. And I realized I really loved that. And it's really interesting because now looking back, having this conversation with you, Sue, for the last 10 years, every kind of step I can see like, oh, I know exactly why that happened now. So it led me to here. Or if this wouldn't have unraveled the way it did, this opportunity wouldn't have come up. And it's cool to be able to look back and see like I was guided the whole time and everything that happened was for my highest good.
Yeah. Isn't, well, I mean, that's how life is lived, right? In
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, you can always
Yeah.
piece it together. When you're in the midst of it, it's hard to see where you're going with it. That's where the faith comes in. That's where you just step out and
Yeah.
see, okay, I'm gonna walk through this door. I'm gonna walk through this opportunity. You mentioned about limiting beliefs, how when you started
Mm-hmm.
out, you had them. What did you do to conquer those limiting beliefs that you had?
To be honest, therapy and other resources like that. Like I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in that. I started going to therapy when I was I think like 26 or 27 and have pretty much been consistent since then and a lot of it has been around kind of overcoming those limiting beliefs, whether it's with, work, my health, relationships, everything and anywhere in between. So I have to give credit there to professional help. But then,
No, if it's hey, I'm all for it. I am in the
yeah,
coaching realm. I didn't seek out professional therapy. I sought out a coach, a life coach,
hmm
and
yeah,
dramatically changed the trajectory of my life just by doing that and having somebody else
hmm
speak into your life. So whether it's a
hmm
really trusted confidant, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, the point is you
hmm
had somebody there that was objective and, outside of you and knew what you needed in order to move you forward. So, I
yeah,
mean, it's
that
that's great.
that help is like it's invaluable. I think
Mhm.
another thing too that became pretty big for me because I'm a massive goal person. I love tracking my goals, setting goals like on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. I actually do like Darren Hardy's Living Your Best Year Ever journal. I've done it like 4 times. I had to become in setting my goals and stuff. I had to become less attached to the how. Like I didn't want to romanticize the how and just becoming attached to like the feeling of if I achieved that goal and getting out of my head and my space about here's exactly the pattern of how I'm going to achieve these goals. And because I've realized there were so many great things that I got to experience that I didn't that were out of my comfort zone or related to a limiting belief that ended up making things work out more beautifully for me than I could have planned. So I think having that mentality and trying to practice it is something else that helped me too.
Mhm. How did you get out of to get beyond that,
Mhm.
to look at your vision and decide, okay,
Mhm.
that's what you were going to do? How'd you get the hows out of the way to actually propel you forward?
Okay, have to give credit again to the journal, like Darren Hardy's journal, Living Your Best Year
Okay.
Ever. There's so much psychology in how he builds that, but it was like I started thinking about my goals differently and setting my goals differently based on like a wheel of life analysis and really getting down to what I want. It was like, okay, did I want to make X amount of revenue by the end of the year, or did I just want complete financial freedom? And then I could potentially make more or be able to come debt free or whatever that was. He helped me shape and figure out the goal, that side better, and my like emotional attachment to the goal. And then when planning the micro steps, what's nice is that of course I would plan action stuff. You can't just set a goal and not work toward it, right? Because we don't want to
Right.
do that. But is the way that it's built is you do every week, like every Sunday night I was doing my week in review. How did my action items go? What was a success? What was a win? What did I learn? And then you kind of reassess and set the new week. So I'll still have
Mhm.
my big goals that I'm tied to, but the how steps are transitioning, and those are what we don't want to romanticize because they usually end up turning or changing much differently
Mm.
than you think they might.
Yeah, that's a good point that your house can
Mhm.
pivot.
Mhm.
You can keep your picture, you can keep your vision on the big picture and what you want to accomplish, but just having that flexibility to be able to
Mhm.
understand that maybe how you get there is going to be a little different. It
Yeah.
sounds like to me that you developed a high level of self awareness in yourself, in your life, in your goals, where you want to go, and it's definitely something that can be cultivated. It sounds like you use this journal, you also have therapy, people have coaches, things like that. So you can, once you start getting this high level of self-awareness, then it kind of helps propel you forward. Do you also, and
Mhm.
I'm curious, do you also use vision setting? Like, do you set a three, like a 1, a 5, or 3 year vision and write that out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So usually my super specific goals are a year out and then I backtrack. So I'll set a year out and I'm like, okay, then where do I need to be within 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or each quarter is what I'll break it down to if that I'm going to
Hmm.
try to hit. But I was recently asked by actually one of my clients what my 5 year plan was. And I had to sit there and I was like, you know what? For someone who loves goals and trying to see my life, I actually didn't have my 5 year plan. So I had to sit and think about it and what I would want my life to feel like, my lifestyle, my family situation, health, financial abundance, all of that. And it felt really good. It felt really great to be able to do
Right.
that. So I definitely can be better about that, but I'm
Yeah.
usually looking at a year because
Did
I
you
feel like
find
so
it
much
hard to
information.
do? Did you find the 5 year hard to do to set that vision?
Oh, so yeah, I
Yeah.
really had to sit and get intentional with what I would want that to look like, because again,
Yeah.
one thing I've learned is, like, when I'm setting goals, sometimes I'll surprise myself and it ends up even better than the goal, and I'll set pretty audacious goals, which is really exciting. So 5 years, I was like, "Man, I so much in my life can change between now and 5 years,
Yeah.
and so much beauty can happen. Who knows what it will look like?"
Right, 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 right. What's some big, hairy, audacious goals? We love those BHAGs. What's 1 or 2 on your 5-year?
Yeah, on the 5 year one, I'll talk about some personal ones. One was that me and my partner were able to, have our first child and make sure, like, growing our family that way. Another really big one that was personal is I would love to be able to buy my mom and dad, like, a new house, or my partner, his parents, they currently live in the same state, but they're about 4 hours away. If we were able to make sure our parents were in, like, really great homes and be able to take that financial stress off of them, would be
Wow.
incredible. And then I had some business ones too, but those were two of my biggest personal ones.
How did that feel to put that on paper?
It's
When you
almost scary, but good, because you look at them and you're like, "Wow, is this possible? If I achieve that,
Yeah.
that's gonna feel so incredible." But then I think once you think about it and put it pen to paper, it then just becomes more of a possibility for you
Mhm.
automatically, and then sitting and thinking about how it would feel to be able to do those things, you're starting to already tie yourself to that journey.
Mhm. When you look at your 1-year goals, either for you can go back to last year or this
Mhm.
year, and you read them, and I keep asking you how you feel, but you put this thing on paper at the beginning of the year, you don't maybe not happen, and then you look at the paper and you go, "Holy crap, I hit that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels really exciting. I've kept, I think, maybe there's one or two that I've lost in between apartment moves or something, but I keep the majority of the journals that I've done. And what I used to do is at the end of every year, almost near like New Year's Eve, go back through one to be able to see, because I'll
Mhm.
also write down great memories I had in the back of the journal. There's like a note section to be able to see, even though this wasn't a goal, like family, camping trips or whatever it is, these things that felt like really great, impactful memories, writing them down. And I love to see that too. But for the goal section, it just feels like a massive accomplishment, and it fuels, the motivation and the inspiration for the next year or so. But one of the goals that I had, and I know that so many people want all the goals to be smart, like the SMART goals, like very
Right.
actionable, metric driven, and I'm a proponent for that. But what I've learned is that sometimes creating a goal that's like a feeling actually helps me a little bit more. So, like, one of my goals last year was to end the year with complete, like, time freedom, working and having a career where I own all the creativity, not reporting to anybody, and just like feeling like I had full abundance in whatever I was doing. And that
Cool.
was when I dove full time into Second in Command Academy, which I didn't know when I was going to do that, what my timeline was. And I didn't know if I was going to be second in command at another agency by the end of next year. But it turned out the way that I ended the career decision at the end of the year hit all of those check boxes, which was great.
Wow.
So I feel like sometimes tangibles are awesome, and sometimes that works for me too.
Yeah, no, you just encouraged and inspired me to take a look at my vision and really question some of the goals that I have on there. I love the one about time freedom. I love the one
Hmm.
about, just having to own all of your creative, your what you do creatively, and
Hmm.
how when we think of goals, you could just put them in like in a tangible box. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
I got to own a plane. I got to move somewhere. I got to have this car. I got to have
Yeah.
a certain KPIs. I need my, the revenue on my business to be that or this that. It's something that's tangible, but I'm so glad that you mentioned the untangibles and that they're okay goals to have too and you can hit those. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Thank
love that.
you.
I love that a lot. So we talked about vision setting. Do you ever struggle
Um,
with imposter syndrome?
I feel like all of humanity hits this and experiences that at some point in their life. And hopefully the more and more we're able to grow and become confident in ourselves, the less we feel that. But yeah, I've had imposter syndrome multiple times throughout my life in various different scenarios. But I mean, like, professionally, my first job where I was working at an agency and it was a startup. I think there were 5 people and I had come on. I had imposter syndrome because I was figuring out the role on my own. I was doubting, oh my gosh, is this good enough? Meanwhile, we're scaling, we're tripling like revenue and amazing things are happening. The last time I felt it though was when my previous marketing agency got acquired, where I was the COO and they asked me to step into the CEO role. I had massive imposter syndrome and I actually hired a different therapist who specialized in working with executives because I was like, this is a niche thing that I need to get over to show up for my team ASAP. And I was just questioning, am I the best person to be a CEO leading, over 50 full-time, team members? Am I the best person to be reporting to the owners, like reporting to a board? And it ended up being an incredible experience and massive learning happened. I learned so much in that year, more than I probably could have in like 3 years because it really challenged me. But I think it's something that I definitely experienced. And I don't have the blueprint on how to get over it other than seeing what help you can get, and not only from therapists but from mentors, from even your team. If it's like in your career, asking them how they feel you're doing, where you can improve, how you can better show up for them, what they really love about your leadership, and what they love about the company that they want to continue to lean into. I feel like getting those affirmations or that feedback
Yeah.
is a way to do
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people about imposter syndrome, and
Mhm.
every once in a while, there's this common thread that, yes, I struggle with this, but then, yes, I have to go back to reality. And then I have to look at the things that I have done. You have that saying, success leaves clues. And you go back and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I have accomplished this thing. I have done that thing, and I did
Yeah.
get through that. So it takes away some of that imposter syndrome that a lot of people struggle with. And it's not about
Mhm.
being fake. It's about being real with where you are and understanding that, hey, I did accomplish these things and it's okay to celebrate
Mhm.
the wins. I have to wonder if imposter syndrome shows up when we don't give ourselves time to celebrate the wins that we have and the
Mm.
accomplishments that we have made.
Yeah.
Interesting thing, you talked about how you went from a COO role into the CEO role.
Yeah.
Is that common? Because we talked earlier about the COO being like that yin yang relationship where the CEO has one set of qualities, the CEO has another, and then they have this intricate dance together. What
Mhm.
was it like going from COO to CEO? You have to have, I mean, to me, I'm coming to the conclusion of, oh my God, you had to have it all.
Yeah,
So what was that like?
I'll address the first part of that question. Like, is it common? So, I was really fortunate because I talked to trusted people in my community and my network as I was undergoing that when I got the offer letter. And one of my like soul sisters, pretty much, she connected me with this woman that she knew and her husband that they both knew, who had undergone the same thing I did. She was the COO at her company and an acquisition happened and she became the CEO, and she actually mentored me. And that was massively, massively helpful. She helped me from reviewing my offer letter to eventually writing contingency plans to how to report to the owners like they are a board. And that was really helpful. And then the company that acquired us, they had actually acquired like I think it was 18 companies in less than 12 months. They were building like a suite of tools,
Mhm.
and one of the
Wow.
other tool owners, it was the same situation. He was the integrator and he became the visionary as well. All of the others, they were the CEO, the visionary. So I feel like I was really fortunate to be able to get a couple of examples of people who were experiencing the same thing as me. But at the end of the day, this was a company that I was with from the ground up. When the CEO started it, I was there right there with her. So it was me, her, and one VA in the Philippines. And then we scaled it to 50 plus people. And because I had such an intensive knowledge of the back end of the company culture, the team, and everything, I think it was a good transition. But do I think long term I would have thrived in that role? No. I know that my lane is being an integrator and implementer and also helping other people be able to be great implementers and integrators. I feel like with even my business now, Second in Command Academy, I have to do certain practices to make sure I'm showing up as a visionary and creating really great new ideas on how I can help other integrators because my true lane is being that integrator.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. If you
Mhm.
could go back to your younger self and deliver a message, what would it be and why?
I think it would be to trust that everything is going to work out always for my highest good. I used to be, and this is something that I tried to work on, the biggest worrier. Like, I would worry and I think this is kind of maybe now that I'm saying this out loud, so I'm like, maybe this was my secret power of seeing ripple effects. If something were gonna happen, I would envision every scenario that could happen from it, what might go wrong, what might go great, but also the what might go wrong is what really, like, kind of weighed me down because when you're thinking about that, again, your mind doesn't really know the difference between, truth and what you're just thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think I caused myself a lot of unnecessary heaviness in some areas. So if I could just tell her to trust everything is working out for me, that would have been great.
Did you find that the worst case scenarios that you would run in your mind didn't happen anyway?
Yes, absolutely.
There is although there is a little bit of value in running the worst case scenarios because when you do, then it forces you to think about, okay, how am I going to solve that if the worst case
Mhm.
really does happen? So
Yes.
there is some value to
Yeah.
it, but I would say it sounds like you didn't allow it to cause analysis paralysis or cause that,
Yeah.
paralysis into no action.
Mhm.
So there is a little bit of benefit to running the
Mhm.
worst case scenario, but I think
Yes.
the bigger accomplishment is when you can walk away and say, okay, yeah, I've got this in front of me,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to allow it to
Yeah.
paralyze me.
Mhm. That's a perfect
So
way of putting it, Sue. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So, Sarah, on my podcast, I ask everybody the same three questions. So, let's jump into those. The first is, what's a book or podcast that's had a significant impact on you?
I know, I feel like I'm cheating because I already brought it up, but that's how much I love this book.
That's
It is
okay.
it's Traction by Gino Wickman, and he dives into all of EOS, like what we were talking about, visionary
Mhm.
integrator relationship, your VTO, your L, how to do L10 meetings, everything, like all these terms got from that book. I just think even if you're a two-man show, if you're a one-man show, it's really valuable to help hold you accountable in how you're structuring your company and really just building it in a way that has like an ensured really strong foundation.
Rocket fuel goes along with that one too,
Yes.
right? To determine who's
Yep.
the visionary, who's the integrator, and tease out both of those roles. I found
Mhm.
both of those books. I read both.
Yeah.
I found them both very,
Yeah.
very helpful in describing and unpacking just everything that goes around visionaries and integrators and
Yeah.
how to implement that into businesses. What's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Okay, one question. I think maybe like the most fulfilling part of this new venture for me. I know we
Yeah,
kind of
go
talked
ahead.
about, I love doing the lessons, but to me, like the moments that I love that I want to celebrate, like we're talking about like importance of celebrating small wins, or
Mhm.
those moments when I'm coaching my clients who are wearing the COO or director of ops hat, and I can just see like on Zoom or hear their voice that they've had an official aha moment, a breakthrough that I know is just allowing their shoulders to kind of come down. It's allowing them to have space and be able to digest something that felt hard and overwhelming at like an expedited speed. Like I get so amped up. That's why I like to do what I like to do because I've been there and like I know how easy it is to get overwhelmed and how easy it is to feel like there is no real guidance because while turning to our CEOs is amazing, they just have a different brain than us. I love those little micro moments. Mhm.
So, as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Um, I would say if we're talking to mainly solopreneurs, I would say it's just if you aren't already getting really clear on maybe what you would want that scalability to look like and when it could happen. So, kind of circling back to what we were talking about, at what point can you tell you're potentially going to be a bottleneck? Is it when you're at 20K in MRR? You know you're no longer going to be able to do the fulfillment and the sales and marketing and the ops. What does that look like if you just get clear on that goal or that mark for yourself? Because we have to be transparent too. We may not be able to be solopreneurs forever and be able to continue to expand our financial abundance beyond like our wildest dreams. What does that mark look like, and how does it feel for you to think about someone you could bring in? Who would you want that role to maybe be, just so you have the vision?
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for that. How can people find you, Sarah?
Yeah, they can find me secondincommandacademy.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Sarah Guidus. My last name is Guidas, and reach out to me
All
either
right.
platform, either place.
Perfect. Well, Sarah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for the gift of your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned an awful lot.
Thank you, Sue. You're a great podcast host. I had a genuinely really great time, so thank you.